My wife left me for her high school sweetheart on Facebook. Then she found out what I did with our house. My wife left me for her high school boyfriend on Facebook and thought I would wait. I sold our house while she was gone. I found the note stuck to the refrigerator door with a cheap plastic magnet we bought on our honeymoon in Gatlinburg. It was just 4 words written in blue ink on the back of a grocery receipt. I need more. I am sorry. We had been married for 11 years. We bought a 3-bedroom colonial outside Akron when we were 26. I worked as a maintenance supervisor for the local school district, and Lauren worked the front desk at a dental office. We had a mortgage that was almost paid off, a golden retriever that died 2 years ago, and a massive backyard. I had spent an entire summer building a wooden deck back there by myself because she told me she wanted a quiet place to drink her morning coffee. For about 6 months, she had been acting entirely different. She stayed on her phone late into the night. I would wake up and see the blue light illuminating her face in the dark, laughing quietly at something on Facebook. She suddenly started going to the gym at 9 o'clock at night. She told me she was just reconnecting with some old friends from high school. His name was Chad. He was her first serious boyfriend when she was 17. He had recently moved back to Ohio after a messy divorce down in Texas. He owned a motorcycle and a struggling roofing business, and according to his public profile, he was a free spirit. I did not find the actual messages until after she had already packed her bags. She left her laptop sitting open on the kitchen island, and the browser tab was still active. I sat on a bar stool and read through months of private messages. She told him that I was a good man, but I was incredibly predictable. She complained that I packed the exact same turkey sandwich for lunch every day. She complained that I went to bed at 10:30 and that I never wanted to travel spontaneously. She typed the words, "I feel completely invisible with him." She was not entirely wrong. I had become boring, but it was not because I wanted to be dull. I thought boring meant we were safe. Being boring paid the mortgage every month. Being boring meant I was awake to fix the furnace when it broke in the middle of January. Being boring meant we never had screaming fights about unpaid bills. She left on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at work. She took 2 large suitcases and her car. She left her gold wedding ring sitting on the kitchen counter right next to the coffee maker. For 3 days, I sat alone in that quiet house. I did not call her phone, and I did not try to call Chad. I just walked from room to room. It did not feel like a home anymore. It felt like a museum dedicated to a dead marriage. I looked at the deck I built where she never actually sat to drink coffee. I stood in the spare bedroom we had painted a soft, light yellow back in 2019 when we thought she was pregnant. It turned out to be a false alarm, and we were so heartbroken that we just closed the door and never repainted the walls. I sat on the living room couch, where we had slowly stopped sitting next to each other. On the 4th day, I picked up my phone and called a local realtor. I did not do it out of spite or to get dramatic revenge. I did it because I physically could not breathe inside those walls anymore. The realtor walked through the rooms and told me the housing market was incredibly hot. We had about $90,000 in equity built up. 2 years prior, Lauren had signed a quitclaim deed when we refinanced the mortgage because my credit score was significantly better than hers. The property was legally in my name. I called a divorce lawyer just to make sure I was not doing anything illegal. The lawyer explained that since we were still legally married, the equity was considered marital property and I would eventually have to split the profits with her. I told him I fully understood. I sold absolutely everything. I did not just list the house. I sold the living room couch, the dining table, the riding lawn mower, and the television. I only kept my hand tools, my clothes, and a small cardboard box of photographs of my dad. The young couple who bought the house was 24 years old. They were first-time buyers. She was a middle school teacher, and he was an auto mechanic. They cried in the driveway when I told them I accepted their offer. I purposely sold it to them for $10,000 under the asking price because standing in the driveway, they reminded me exactly of who Lauren and I used to be before we got so incredibly tired of each other. I packed my truck and moved into a cramped 1-bedroom apartment located directly over a hardware store on Main Street. I started spending my empty nights in a small, unheated garage behind the store that the owner let me rent for $200 a month. I had always loved working with wood, but Lauren used to complain that it was a loud hobby that just created dust in the garage. I bought some cheap lumber and started building things. I made heavy cutting boards, then coffee tables, then sliding farmhouse doors. I listed them on the local marketplace, and people actually bought them. I did not post any updates about my life online. I did not change my relationship status. I just disappeared into my work. 7 months later, the bell above the hardware store door chimed. I was standing in the back room, covered in fine sawdust, organizing a rack of metal clamps. Lauren walked through the aisles and found me. She looked entirely different. She looked exhausted and deflated. She had gained a noticeable amount of weight, and her hair was tied back in a messy, unwashed knot. She stood in the doorway and told me that Chad had been sleeping with a 22-year-old girl who worked at his roofing shop. She looked at the floor and told me he was not passionate at all. He was just mean and drank too much. She swallowed hard and told me that after just 2 months of living together, Chad had called her boring too. She looked up at me with red eyes and said she had made a massive mistake. Then she looked around the dusty shop, frowned, and asked me a question. I drove by the house this morning, she said. There was a truck in the driveway. Who lives there now? A young family, I answered quietly. I sold it. She just stared at me, her mouth falling slightly open as the reality hit her. You sold our house? She asked, her voice raising in pitch. You sold our house without even asking me. You left a note on the back of a grocery receipt, I said, keeping my voice completely level. You told me you needed more, and you left. I did not wait around. She started breathing heavily, her eyes darting around the small, dirty room as she realized her safety net was completely gone. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice cracking with panic. I thought we could talk like adults. I thought we could try again. That was the exact moment I finally understood what she thought the word boring actually meant. To her, boring meant that I would always just be there. Boring meant that I would keep the big house warm, mow the lawn, and keep the utility bills paid while she went off to decide if the exciting motorcycle guy worked out. I was a waiting room. I wiped the sawdust off my hands with a rag. I put your half of the house equity into a completely separate bank account, I told her. The money is sitting there whenever you want to transfer it. It is $45,000. I am not trying to steal from you. She wrapped her arms around her own stomach, shivering slightly in the cold shop. I did not sell the house to hurt you, Lauren, I said. I sold it because every single corner of those rooms was built for someone who eventually decided I was not enough for them. I could not stay and heal in a place that felt like a giant rejection letter. She started crying right there in the middle of the concrete floor. She covered her face with her hands and let out a loud, ugly sob. You were never boring, Jason, she cried through her fingers. You were safe. And I was so stupid that I confused being safe with being boring. I did not step forward to hug her. I did not tell her everything was going to be okay, and I did not offer to take her back. I just stood there and let her cry until she was entirely out of breath. When she finally calmed down, I helped her carry a heavy maple cutting board I had finished earlier that week out to the trunk of her car. She wiped her eyes, thanked me, and asked softly if she could call me sometimes just to check in. I told her it was best if she did not. I watched her pull out of the parking lot and drive away down Main Street. I turned around, walked back inside the cold hardware store, and went straight to the back room. I picked up my push broom and started sweeping the sawdust off the concrete floor so I would be ready to work in the morning.